Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video I'm going to give some feedback on Richard's speaking test. So yesterday, or a couple of days ago, I posted a video with an L1 user of English, a native speaker of English. Some people in the comment section said, this is not a native speaker. Okay, cool. Fine. But I'm not going to do a full breakdown on the speaking performance, but I just want to take a look at the test and just highlight a couple of things that, really impressed me about the candidate's speech that you might not have noticed. I don't like giving scores to L1 users of English because it's kind of silly, right? This is his first language. It doesn't really matter what mark he gets, but I know some people are interested in the marks, so I'll give a mark at the end too. As I mentioned, this isn't going to be a full breakdown, hopefully no more than 30 minutes. Let's get into the test. Good morning. My name is Glyn. Would you please tell me your full name?
Hello, my name's Richard Lloyd James.
And what should I call you?
Richard.
See, no long answers, just gives the name, says what I can call him. That's all we want. Cool. Now, in this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Where are you from?
I am from a small town called Caerphilly in Wales, which is in the United Kingdom.
Get a little bit of development, tiny bit of development, but that's all we need for this question. So many people go into their scripts, they start talking about the picturesque views and the breathtaking nature and scenery. We don't need that. Do you like living in Caerphilly?
Yes, it's okay. It's okay. The community spirit is good.
Okay, community spirit, good.
We've got
We've gotta. Notice that Welsh pronunciation. We've gotta. Instead of we have or we have got we get we've gotta.
good schools around for the kids.
We've got good schools around. So that is not an article. It's a disfluency. We've got good schools around for the kids.
Welsh-speaking schools, which I think is very important to keep the language alive.
And is there anything you don't like about Caerphilly? Yeah, it's a horrible, horrible town. Never go there.
Yeah, the crime rate has gone through the roof.
A few people mentioned this, gone through the roof. It means it's increased a lot. Idiomatic expression, it's gone through the roof. Notice the candidate isn't forcing it, right? This candidate doesn't know what the IELTS speaking test is. This candidate doesn't know what gets good marks and what doesn't get good marks. He doesn't know what the band descriptors are. It's just natural metaphorical use. It's gone through, the crime rates have gone through the roof. Lovely expression.
Recently, due to police not being on the streets.
Due to somebody not doing something. Complex construction, right? This gerund clause, due to somebody doing something, due to somebody not doing something. Again, the candidate has no idea that he's producing this language, but this is what L1s can do, and it's amazing.
And, well, people basically thinking they can get away with, burglaries. And
again, that extension, people basically thinking that. So there's people thinking that also connects to that due to. Really good.
Thefts and damage to vehicles.
Thefts, good word formation. Damage to vehicles, cool.
So yeah, it's a concern.
Do you think you'll continue living in Caerphilly in the future?
Hope not. I have plans to move to Denmark.
Hope not. Notice this, right? A lot of people say, I hope yes, I hope no, hope not. This is actually taught at C1 level. This I think so, I don't think so, I hope not, I'm afraid so, I'm afraid not. Hope not. Really nice.
Denmark in 5 years' time.
And
if
also,
everything goes.
There was.
Hope not. I have plans to move to Denmark.
I have plans to. So instead of saying I'm planning to, we can say I have plans to do something cool.
In 5 years' time, if everything.
And notice this, in 5 years' time. A lot of people might say in 5 years, absolutely fine. But in 5 years' time is a very natural way of saying when.
Goes to plan, but we shall see.
Again, interesting use of shall. Slightly archaic or slightly old-fashioned use. We shall see, but it is still common. Not massively commonly used, but still from time to time this use of shall in the positive is just sometimes used. All right, let's talk about having breakfast now. What do you usually have for breakfast?
I do like scrambled egg on.
The adding of do in present simple, adding of the auxiliary, I do like having scrambled eggs. I do like, cool, we've seen this a lot from different candidates, but nice.
Toast with a lot of butter on my toast as well, and a lot of pepper and salt.
And how often do you skip breakfast?
I skip breakfast, I'd say twice a week.
And notice that skip breakfast, we don't get the p and the b sound. We don't hear I skip breakfast, we hear I skip breakfast. That first p disappears completely. I skip breakfast, I skip breakfast. Notice it here. And how often do you skip breakfast?
I skip breakfast,
I skip breakfast, skip breakfast, connected speech.
I'd say twice a week.
In twice a week, not twice a week, but twice a week, connected speech, twice a week.
Because of work commitments, and obviously I gotta sort my kids out for breakfast.
Again, I've gotta here, not I've gotta as in I have a, but I've gotta as in I have to. So this use of I have got to is that like semi-modal of obligation. I've gotta sort my kids out. I've gotta, did he say sort my kids out?
Because of work commitments, and obviously I gotta sort my kids out for.
Lovely phrase about that. I've got to sort my kids out. What does that mean, to sort my kids out? It's the type of language you don't really hear so much from L2 users of English, but we hear it very often with British people. Sort my kids out. Sort my kids out just means like prepare them for school, make sure that they're doing what they should be doing, putting their clothes on, putting the books and stuff in their bags, making sure they brush their teeth, all of that stuff. I've got to sort my kids out.
Breakfast, so yeah. Time
And
it is.
some people said that, you know, the candidate deserves 8 for lexical resource, and I think you guys are living in cuckoo land. It's absolute madness to think that this is a band 8 for vocab, clearly for grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, clearly at band 9. No, not even a shadow of a doubt that it's at band 9. Yeah.
I haven't got enough time.
Do you prefer having breakfast alone or with other people?
I prefer having breakfast alone.
Why?
I prefer having breakfast alone because there's a nice peace and quiet. I can watch the news and hear what's going on the news.
That seems a bit weird. I can watch the news and hear what's going on the news. Okay, bit weird, but fine.
And yeah, I like peace and quiet.
And have you ever had breakfast at a cafe or a restaurant?
I have, yes.
Again, that use of the auxiliary, right? Do you, da 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 da, I do. Do you, da 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 da, I don't. Just the subject and auxiliary. Have you ever had breakfast at a cafe or restaurant? I have, yes. Really nice.
Used to do it frequently, but
cool, get that used to. And notice not used to, like many of my candidates say, not used to, but used to. I used to do it. I used to do it. Let's listen again. Ever had breakfast at a cafe or a restaurant?
I have, yes. I used to do it
Weak form of to. I used to do it. Used to.
frequently, but yeah, I don't know why. I just decided to probably do it once a month, something like that.
Let's talk about history now. Did you like learning about history when you were at school?
I did enjoy history. It was probably
Adding the auxiliary again in past simple, I did enjoy, not just I enjoyed, but I did enjoy. Nice.
one of the subjects, that and sports, which I enjoyed.
Why? You notice with this candidate, I have to say why a lot. And again, this is just because, you know, this is a dude that doesn't know what the IELTS speaking test is. He doesn't know that he's supposed to develop his answers, right? All of that's exam technique. This candidate has no idea what exam technique is. Why would he know what's going to be in an English speaking test? I just said, I'll ask you some questions, just answer them in natural ways. So if you feel like there's like a lack of development in the answer, it's because it's just a dude.
I don't know, just because of the different stories, and you know, sometimes you don't know whether it's true or not. You know, there's a lot of myths about.
Nice embedded question. You don't know whether it is true or not. Really good.
And yeah, I don't know why. I just really enjoyed it.
And what did you learn about in your history classes?
We learnt about, I think it was the Suez Canal. You'll have to forgive me because my memory's not the best because it was years and years and years ago. So, yeah.
I'm not just the candidate doesn't freak out when he doesn't remember an answer, right? It's not like, oh, I don't remember the. He just explains. I think it was the Suez Canal, but I don't remember for sure.
Yeah. And the Russians as well. We learnt about the Russians, the Tsar, and stuff like that as
The Russians are Nikolai II, I guess.
well.
And which part of your own country's history do you find the most interesting?
Again, I'll go back to myths because apparently Boudicca or Boudica.
So I think there are two pronunciations, Boudica and Boudica. I think both of them are accepted, but it doesn't matter, right? If he mispronounces the name of a historical figure, not a big deal. If you don't know, Boudica is an old Celtic queen who fought against the Romans in about, I don't know, 50, the year 50, something like that. The Romans invaded Britain, and there was this idea that Boudica, she was the queen that fought against the Romans, and there's a big statue of her out in London somewhere.
Yeah, she's a myth, and I have been looking into her recently.
And again, is she really a myth? Does it matter if she's a myth or not? No, this is just the candidate speaking about why he's interested. Would he lose points for saying that Boudica's a myth when clearly she's not? Or I don't know, she might be, according to the. I don't know. But no, it doesn't matter if Boudica really is a myth or not. Candidate's just expressing his point of view.
You know, and also Ivor Bach as well, who apparently scaled some Cardiff Castle, I think it was, with his bare hands.
Again, fantastic vocab. To scale a wall or to scale a castle, it means like to climb with his bare hands, just using his hands, with scaled Cardiff Castle with his bare hands. Yeah, the story of Ivor Bach, little Ivor.
So, yeah, and the school, obviously the junior school I was in was Ivor Bach as well.
So, you know, some people mentioned that candidate doesn't develop, but you don't have to develop every single answer, right? To get that, like, band 6, you have to show that willingness to speak at length. Band 7, it means that you can readily provide long turns. Candidate has no problem developing. Some of his answers are a little bit short, but remember, we don't focus on every single question. We think, okay, as a whole, can the candidate develop? And the candidate's developing his answers absolutely fine in part 1.
So I got a bit of a connection there. So.
And would you like to learn about another country's history in the future?
Yes, probably Denmark, seeing as I'm looking to go there.
Seeing as I'm looking to go there. So we get that participle, but seeing as, which also has this cohesive function, right? Meaning just because, seeing as I'm looking to go there, because I'm looking to go there. Again, that's the type of language you just don't hear from L2 users of English. Seeing as a replacement of because. And again, I'm looking to go there. Not quite as strong in modality as like I'm going there, I'm moving there. Even I'm planning to move there, I'm looking to go there. Really nice.
In the future.
Okay, thank you. Now, okay, so quick comments on part 1. Candidate speaks English at a native level. Cool. That's all I'm going to say. Let's get to part 2. The candidate needs to describe. And, you know, I would say a lot of people ask, like, what's more important in this IELTS test? Is it knowledge of English or is it exam technique? And I'm a big believer that knowledge of English is, you know, always going to be, there is no replacement. There's no substitute for speaking English well. If you speak English well, you're going to get a good mark in the IELTS test. If you don't speak English well, you're not going to get a good mark in the IELTS test. And it doesn't matter how much exam prep you do. It doesn't matter how much you work on your technique and strategy. If you don't have grammar, vocab, and pronunciation and fluency and all of that good stuff, you're not going to get a high mark. But this is one part where, you know, if you just took a stranger off the street, which is basically what this candidate is, if you just took a guy off the street and said, okay, do this task, probably this is the one part where without much preparation, they might run into trouble. Candidate needs to talk about an activity he's done that made him feel really tired. between 1 and 2 minutes to give your talk, and I'll let you know when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
The activity that made me feel tired was playing football. I'm a 45-year-old now. I'm a lover of football. I play football.
Well, I'm a lover of football. Nice, a simple way a lot of people use it. I'm keen on, I'm fond of. I'm not a huge fan of those terms, but like I'm a lover of football. Very nice.
Basically all my life. I still do now in the garden with the kids.
Nice use of substitution. I still do now. Do here the auxiliary verb that's replacing the verb phrase play football. I still do now with the kids. Again, that type of grammar is taught at C1. Things like ellipsis and substitution, that's really, really good grammar. The use of auxiliary verbs that a lot of L2 users might not notice, but yeah, really good.
But yeah, so someone from work asked me to join in.
Ask somebody to do something, complex infinitive phrase.
I hadn't played for about 2 years.
Hadn't played for about 2 years, past perfect. Now, this dude doesn't know what past perfect is, right? He has no idea. I promise you, if you ask him, like, what is the form and function of past perfect, he doesn't know. He just uses it. But one of those, I keep making that point, right? That in IELTS speaking part 2, if you have, like, talk about a time when you did something in the past, using those narrative tenses, that variety of bit of past simple, past continuous, past perfect, that's how L1 users usually speak. And so it's nice to see this candidate, who's just an everyday regular person who knows nothing about the test using this. I hadn't played for 3 years or whatever. Cool.
Something like that. So trying to run around after all the youngsters made me feel really tired.
Cool, gerund as the subject, they're trying to run around, made me feel tired.
And of course, it was hot as well here. So yeah, I needed plenty of water. And the reason I done it was basically because I always...
In cleft sentence, the reason I done it was... Now, you might think, well, reason I done it? That's a grammar mistake. It should be the reason I did it. Yeah, but not all L1 users speak the same, and there are many, many, many native speakers who use done for the past simple. I done it yesterday instead of I did it yesterday. Would you be marked down for that in IELTS? No. IELTS says that if you make the type of grammar mistakes that are typical of an L1 user, then you wouldn't be punished for it. Some language purists might say it's a mistake, but certainly a lot of people in sociolinguistics would say I done it is just a different variety of I did it, and it is unfair and maybe even discriminatory to say that one is correct and one isn't. Really, yeah, difficult to understand the correctness of language. There are lots of different opinions about how or what is correct language and how we decide what correct language is. So a great example here of the reason I done it instead of the reason I did it.
wanted to jump back on a football pitch. I was always
Again, wanted to jump back. He's not talking about jumping in a literal sense. Jump back means return to something. And again, this is the example of that idiomatic language that is required in IELTS. And it is not stuff like the grass is always greener on the other side, or it's raining cats and dogs. That stuff feels forced, it's unnatural, it's weird. Things like I always wanted to jump back onto the football field. That's what we mean when we talk about the use of idiomatic items.
afraid I wasn't fit enough, and I soon found out I wasn't fit enough.
I soon found out, really good with the sequencing.
Which made me tired. So, yeah. And I would like to do it again sometime as well, if I've got the spare time.
So a problem that L1 users have in part 2 is that they don't know what 1 or 2 minutes feels like or sounds like, right? Because they haven't practiced it. But also, the time limits are given there because the test is for L2 users of English, right? English is not your first language. You're a learner of English. So you're showing your level. And so in terms of like language efficiency, how much language we get out within a certain amount of time, an L1 can get this amount of language out in 45 seconds, and it would probably take an L2 user like 1 minute 20 to get the same language out. He's very fluent. He's not speaking super fast. He's speaking at a controlled, natural pace. But because he's so articulate, he can get all of that information out quite quickly. But the exam does say that he needs to speak for between 1 and 2 minutes. And so if you fall under the 1 minute mark, the examiner will ask you a prompt question to keep you talking. And so I have to step in and ask, so what do you usually do if you're doing a physical activity and you're really tired? So notice this question here, because there's a bit of a lapse in coherence, right? The question is, what do you usually do if you're doing something that makes you feel really tired? And what I'm asking here is, like, what do you do as a result of that? So what do you do in response to your tiredness? But the candidate answers,
work, basically.
so the candidate has a misunderstanding. The candidate thinks that I've asked, like, what else do you do that makes you feel tired? But the question is really, what do you do when you feel tired, like as a result of feeling tired? Now, misunderstanding a question like this isn't going to cost you, really shouldn't cost you anything. But the fact that we are under 1 minute and we get an answer that is not the appropriate answer to the question, for fluency and coherence, not for fluency, but for coherence, an examiner might decide, well, yeah, you didn't meet the task achievement element of this IELTS test.
My work demands me to pick up a lot of heavy products. I'm always on my feet all day as well. And of course, I walk to work and back to work, which makes me tired. And of
To work and back from work, but all right.
course, then I got to play with the kids, which again makes me tired.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so you've been talking. Right, so comments on part 2, absolutely fine. Candidate gets everything out, uses narrative tenses very well, uses sequences well, adverbs, all of that good stuff, explains ideas very, very clearly. The only small issue is that he got through everything in 45 seconds. And, had I told him before the test that make sure you speak for at least 1 minute, or make sure you keep speaking until I tell you to stop, then we would have had no problems at all. But I imagine, if I did this with 20 native speakers of English, L1 users of English, if I did this with 20, I think probably about half of them would stop speaking under 1 minute, I think. Talking about playing football that made you feel really tired, let's talk about being tired in a more general sense now. Do you agree that people are generally more tired now than people in the past were?
Maybe, yeah, that's a good point.
Not a good point, it's a question.
Maybe because of work demands, I think we work a lot of hours, and of course it depends on what job you're doing as well. I mean, stress is a factor which can make you tired as well. Sitting in front of a screen, that can make you tired. So I think we do work all the hours, and a lot of overtime in this country as well, which is asked of you as well. And you want to make a bit more money for your family, which makes you tired.
You probably notice the candidate is just slightly less articulate maybe in part 3 than in part 1. That's because part 3 is difficult, right? You get these discussion questions, they throw you off balance, they force you to think about things that are not on the front of your mind. Like, what do you have for breakfast? Okay, easy. What did you do last weekend? Easy. What kind of music do you like? Easy. But do you think we're more tired nowadays than people in the past were? That does require some thought, right? And we call this cognitive load. And that's why those questions are in part 3, because they want to increase the cognitive load. The examiners want to see how you produce language when your brain is overloaded or is challenged by a non-linguistic difficulty. So you don't just have the difficulty of finding language, but you have the non-linguistic difficulty of generating an appropriate idea. And which do you think is worse, feeling physically tired or feeling mentally tired?
I would say mentally tired.
Notice how the candidate buys time. I would say mentally tired. So it's a really good way of buying time, like stretching out your speech. A lot of people buy time with like memorized phrases like, oh, that is a very interesting question. I'm glad you asked me. I haven't thought about that before. And it's okay to use those a little bit from time to time, but a far more natural way is, I would say, mentally tired. Cool. Nice. Very instructive. Fine.
Yes.
And again, candidate, doesn't give reasons, doesn't develop, has to be prompted to do it. That's just, what normal people do.
I don't know.
And he's honest, right? He doesn't pretend that he knows. He doesn't pretend that he has an answer. He just feels like being mentally tired is worse. And when he has to give a reason, the cognitive load gets overloaded, and then it takes a little bit of time. But now, can the candidate produce a meaningful answer? Can he talk through his, uncertainty?
Because there's already a lot of things going on in your head, and if you've been in front of a computer screen as well, or and you're mentally tired, then like with physical, you can always jump in the bath. You can use products to put in your legs, to put in your arms, wherever you're feeling the pain. But then with mental tiredness, then there's not a lot you can do.
Cool, gets that tiredness, right? That suffix at the end, mental tiredness. And he does get through the answer and explains the answer, explains his point of view in a very, very clear way. So, you don't need to have perfect ideas. You don't need to have sophisticated ideas. You don't even need to be sure of your ideas. You can say, I don't know, and then take a moment to think and explain your ideas. That's perfectly natural. A lot of people think they need to have perfect opinions ready to go for all questions. You don't.
In my opinion.
What advice would you give to someone who always feels tired?
I would definitely see a doctor.
I don't know if that's advice, right? What I would advise them to see a doctor. I would tell them to see a doctor, but okay.
Maybe get some tests, and there may be an underlying problem.
Again, the answer is quite short. Some answers in part 3 can be short, but if they are short, the examiner will push you to give more information.
So definitely see a specialist.
What underlying problems could lead to a person being tired all the time?
Maybe diabetes.
And that's just an honest answer, right? It's an honest guy answer. Maybe diabetes. Nothing more to say. Okay, examiner, fine, we'll go to the next question.
That could lead to it.
All right, let's talk about sleeping patterns now. What do you think are some good things to do before going to bed?
Don't eat. Don't drink sugary drinks. Don't drink too much. Don't drink alcohol. Don't take drugs.
So yeah, candidate lists 5 things that you shouldn't do before going to sleep. In general, teachers advise their students not to be too listy. I would agree with that approach. It's better, if you want to list things, list no more than 3 and then focus on 1. So, I'd say don't eat, don't drink too much, and definitely don't drink alcohol before you go to sleep. Because, problem with eating is that when you eat a lot of food, your body needs time to digest it. So then when you're like trying to fall asleep, your body is working. So your brain is kind of doing these 2 different things. It's trying to switch off, but then at the same time, it's trying to break down food. And I think that's one reason why people might not be able to fall asleep, right? That would be a better answer, just a more powerful answer in terms of like explanatory power, but it is very natural for people just to give these lists. I would advise against just being too listy in IELTS, but anyway, let's keep going. Some people recommend doing things like meditation before going to bed. Do you think that's a good idea?
Yes, I've actually done some meditating myself.
Present perfect. Yeah, I've actually done some meditating. Cool. And instead of, yeah, cool.
And yeah, it does work. Yeah.
Again, that use of the auxiliary in present simple, right? It does work. Instead of, yeah, it works. It does work. That emphatic does.
It does work. So yeah, give it a try, definitely.
Give it a try. Again, very natural language. Give it a try. And what kind of problems could a person have if they didn't get enough sleep?
then you wake up feeling tired. And of course, if work makes you tired, if you were tired before you start work, then you're going to be really, really tired when you come home.
Intonation is sustained across long utterances. That's in the band descriptors. So you can see the use of intonation there. It's like and of course, as an L1 user, he does this without thinking about it. He's just producing language. He's just doing what comes natural to him. He's just speaking in a natural way. But when you analyze the language, it's like, wow, that's an impressive way of sustaining intonation over a long utterance. Cool.
So,
And what are the problems with being tired all the time? And again, candidate's not panicking. He's not freaking out. He's not worrying. He just starts laughing because it's like, what do we do with those? We do have some of those questions in IELTS where you think like, why the F are you asking me that question? And I like the response, just to laugh, to take a moment and then provide an answer.
being tired all the time means you can't think straight. You
Notice that dropping of the t. You can't think straight. Very common feature of Welsh English. You can't think straight. Can't think straight. Can't think straight.
you could get a bit narky. You could
Lovely vocab. Narky means like irritable, like it's everything annoys you.
get a bit angry with people if you've had more sleep, then you tend to be
At least I think that's what narky means. I don't know.
a bit more chilled out.
Some people say that children's sleeping habits are becoming worse because they're kind of staying up later and they kind of sleeping with their phones and their tablets and stuff. Do you think that's true?
Yes, I do. Yeah, because their brain
In that auxiliary, yes, I do. So many people when I'm teaching people like auxiliaries, basic things like, do you like it? Yes, I do. No, I don't. Can you swim? Yes, I can. No, I can't. A lot of people give me pushback on that. They say that's not how native speakers speak. I've been to London many times, or I live in London, and people don't speak like that. Yes, they do. People use auxiliaries a lot.
are not switching off before they go to bed. So, and of course, some of them stay up till 2, 3 in the morning. When the parents
Stay up till really nice.
are asleep, they turn their computers on, or
when the parents are asleep. This adjective, to be asleep. Again, it's one of those adjectives that's very rarely used. A lot of people use sleep as a verb, fine, but also to be asleep as an adjective, cool stuff.
put their phones on. And of course, your mind's racing then before you go.
Again, idiomatic expression, your mind is racing. Not literally racing, it's metaphorically racing.
To sleep, which is a problem.
What kind of technology do you think we might have in the future that will help us to sleep better?
I'm not too sure. Maybe.
Again, I'm not too sure. And then we get the hedging language, right? Maybe
Hypnosis might work through.
Again, that modality might work. So when the candidate's not sure, I'm not sure. Maybe hypnosis might work. Might has that weak modality. All good.
Through a computer screen or through VR or just to train your brain. Maybe there'll be an app coming out just to train your brain to go to sleep.
Maybe there will be an app coming out. There will be something doing something. Very good.
I mean, technology's already doing it. With YouTube, you
Present continuous technology is already doing it. Cool.
you can just lie back and you can list some voices or some noises, and they have got a lot of stuff on YouTube to help you sleep.
Thank you. That is the end of the test. All right, so I said I didn't want to do scores because it's like doing scores with an L1 user of English sounds a bit strange. Hope it was instructive, but I will give scores. Pronunciation obviously is a 9. Grammar is obviously a 9. Vocabulary is obviously a 9. If anyone thinks that there's anything less than a 9 for pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary, then oh my goodness, I would love to see what a 9 is in your book. A lot of people think that you have to like use extremely poetic, flowery, fancy language in the IELTS test. You don't. You have to use topic-specific, precise language, and that's exactly what the candidate does. There are no grammar mistakes, or only grammar mistakes are things like using done instead of did, which is not enough to bring anyone's score down. The only area where maybe the candidate didn't get a band 9 is this fluency and coherence. The candidate does have enough fluency for a band 9, but the coherence, that part 2 answer was a little bit short. A couple of the questions maybe was slightly off topic, so I could see a justification for a band 8 for fluency and coherence because of that. Minimum 8.5, but of course the candidate speaks English at a level that deserves a band 9. No doubt about that at all. Anyway, hope you found this breakdown useful. Let me know in the comments section if you disagree with anything that I say. And if you'd like to have your own free practice speaking test with feedback, or if you'd like me to check your IELTS writing tasks, I get all of my candidates from 2 places, from my Facebook group and my Telegram channel. Links to both of those are given in the description below. Candidates are always selected at random. But if you'd like to avoid the random process, if you'd prefer to pay for a practice speaking test or for a writing check, then a full price list is on my website, expertexaminer.com. Links to everything are in the description below. More videos coming soon, but for now, bye-bye.